What is going on, guys? My name is Landon. Today I'm bringing you guys yet again another video, and for today we are talking about Echo Fox GG that officially entered into the Call of Duty scene. They picked up some pretty well-known players for the most part, picking up the roster known as OTOD, or One Team One Dream, consisting of the lineup being Proofy, Neslo, Cyborg, and Sinful. So, along with Echo Fox kind of entering into the scene, I'll give you guys a little bit of, sometimes if you don't know who Echo Fox is, you're not really sure of the organization just in general. I'll be talking about them, and we'll also be talking about the new roster, how they're going to perform, what game types they struggle in, what each player kind of brings to the table as far as their team or the previous history being in Black Ops, or you're just in Call of Duty, from the wide spectrum of things. So we're talking about a number of different stuff today on this roster. Really looking forward actually to this new team and this ever-growing organization known as Echo Fox. So to give a little bit of background information on Echo Fox GG, essentially this team or this organization was started by Rick Fox. For those who don't know, Rick Fox essentially was a NBA player back in the day for, I believe, the Celtics for a short time, and also for the Lakers in their early time, like the early 2000s, I think is when he was on the Lakers for. I remember him from that. I remember him being on like Dancing with the Stars, which sounds kind of strange, but he's a very well-known NBA player. Definitely has in some ways kind of made his brand a lot more. In some ways, he's made his brand expand, I guess you could say. He's a very well-known NBA player who previously played. Of course, he's kind of expanded, I believe, now into esports, essentially picking up some new teams and adding onto his organization. I believe in only 6 months of Echo Fox being established, they've already picked up an NALCS team and also a CSGO team, and now it seems to be a Call of Duty team. So now that you guys have a little bit of a background as far as the Echo Fox GG organization goes, it's now obviously time to talk about their Call of Duty roster, which of course I've been able to watch these guys, spectate them for a good amount of time. I'm not really sure exactly how long they've been together, but I've been watching them for the last couple of weeks. I've been able to watch especially Sinful's stream. He has past broadcasts on, so that's how I'm able to actually watch what roles they kind of do, how their team comp kind of works, and I've watched maybe, I don't want to say like how much experience that I have with them, but I've definitely watched a couple hours worth of their gameplay to kind of get a little bit of an idea as to what their roles and how they kind of play in certain game types and whatnot. So we're going to first talk about Proofy, because I feel like Proofy to me is definitely the main player to be watching out for on this roster as far as his organization goes, because as far as like the Call of Duty scene goes right now, ever since he ended up leaving or having to depart from that Optic Gaming roster, he's never really been the same, if that makes any sense. He's really been playing for the top organizations that he used to, because granted, this guy is a veteran. He's a veteran in the scene. He's been playing Call of Duty ever since like COD 4 back in the day. And like I said, ever since he left Optic Gaming, he went over to Optic Nation for a short time, to play alongside of TP and Karma and Swanee. That was obviously, a great thing. We were really looking forward and seeing the big things with that. He went to FaZe Black, went to Envy, went to E6, which did not work out well at all. And then toward the beginning of the regular season for Black Ops 3, he ended up joining alongside of Luminosity Gaming. Shortly after their first event, he ended up leaving that organization, being dropped for Saints, coming from E6, in which he formed a group, with Wheats, Pac-Man, and also Colchan, to be under a name known as Question Mark, in which case they ended up qualifying for Season 1. Later, they went under the name of Rush, as I think he ended up actually establishing an organization known as Rush Call of Duty World League. And then they ended up getting bought out by TSM. He surely played for TSM for a little bit of time, not really that long, maybe like a week or two. And then, due to a little bit of internal issues going on with him and that brand, he ended up leaving the organization, and Ivy ended up filling in his place for the rest of the Call of Duty World League season. I don't remember exactly what week it was, but it was pretty early on. I know Ivy was definitely playing through at least half of Season 1, if not over that. So, a major question for me as well was, how is his motivation looking? Because ever since, like I said, ever since leaving Optic Gaming, heading into Advanced Warfare, he really hasn't been on that, really hasn't been the same Proofy. I mean, realistically, you think of Proofy, you think of the amount of organizations that he's been on, like I said, the history that he has in the Call of Duty scene, and it just seems that motivation hasn't been there, but it seems to be there now. I mean, he seems to be very motivated to want to get on. I mean, I know he's been tweeting about Call of Duty a lot. I think he's been saying like gym grind, COD grind, stuff like that. So he seems to, whenever someone's tweeting about something, you can kind of get an idea for what's going on in their head, and it seems that he is pretty motivated about this roster. When it comes down to his role on the team, he plays more of a secondary AR for most respawns, if not all respawns. He's normally rocking something like the Tempest, right behind Cyborg, rocking the Scythe, which we'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, I think this is a really good role for Proofy. I think obviously being an AR for this team, also in some ways being that third SMG if he needs to, is going to be a good blend for him. I think he honestly is going to be a really big factor for this roster because of his leadership, the amount of experience that he has. He has the ability in some ways to lead this team along with Neslo, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does. He's definitely, like I said, one player to be looking out for this roster, specifically due to his past and not really having that much motivation to really want to put all that out on the table. And the next player that we talk about is going to be Neslo, who is right now, as far as I know, I'm not really sure on the captain, to be honest, with the Echo Fox lineup, but I know Neslo for sure, without a doubt, if you've watched any of their scrims, scrims or not really scrims, watch any of their wagers or stuff like that, you know that Neslo is the in-game leader for this team. He's also going to be more of a sub player when it comes down to it. We all know Neslo's previous history. I believe he ended up tweeting out a twit longer not too long ago talking about his, thank you to Kozdov and the Team Caliber organization. A long run with those guys back at Advanced Warfare throughout the most part. And really, when you think of Neslo, you think of TK. You think of the run that those guys had, and in some ways, sad ending that they end up having at relegation. Ended up losing to 100 Thieves in that best of 7 single elimination tournament. In which case, Gunjar wasn't able to come due to visa issues. They had to sub in Imbos, and we kind of know how it went from there. Not ended up closing that up, but I believe they ended up losing that series like 4-2 or 4-1 or something like that. So kind of unfortunate for Neslo. I know though that he was a major free agent coming into season 2. Of course, we had a number of different roster switch ups. Dream Team actually being one of those major teams. The reason why I bring up Dream Team is because he actually mentioned that he was offered a spot on DT and decided not to take it. He didn't want to be a secondary offer that they had behind Parasite and Spacely. He wanted to be on an organization where he felt comfortable with, and on a team where he didn't feel like scraps, like the secondhand scraps, that he wasn't the main objective for them in the first place. So with that in mind, he had an opportunity to get on the league, didn't take it. Of course, ends up missing the league, being on Team Caliber, and was a major free agent heading into season 2. And he is a great addition to the squad, being the main leader of this roster, being in some ways the end game leader without a doubt for this team. And it seems that after every single game, he's always talking about what went wrong, what went right, things that we need to improve on, which I think is always really good to have for a team. I think for a majority of TK's run throughout season 1 or stage 1, just in general, and Team Caliber, for the most part, he was always to me a player that I was without a doubt looking out for as far as consistency goes, as far as what he was doing, and his overall morale. Honestly, this is a huge deal for him, realizing that, I left this organization, I now have a huge opportunity being on an organization as big as Echo Fox is, and being a new organization. It's also in some ways kind of inspiring from what I've heard players say. When you're on a new organization, you in some ways kind of set the path, you set the overall example of what this organization is meant to do, and I think it's kind of interesting fact to kind of mention and kind of talk about. I talk about highly motivated, definitely probably one of the most motivated players that I've seen in all of esports. Wants to win, has the drive to want to do so, and constantly is willing to scrim at all times whenever he is kind of willing to do that. So along with his role, he normally will go with kinetic armor, but a lot of times that is banned out when it comes down to competitive matches. So you'll see him rock the active camo as of late. When it comes down to uplink, they like to keep the kinetic armor in. He usually runs with that, but when it comes down to regular hard points, he's normally got the active camo in hand. Next player for this team that I'm really excited to be talking about is going to be Cyborg. Cyborg is the main AR scythe player in every single respawn that they have. Of course, you always want a scythe player, and Cyborg is the definition of what you want a scythe player to really be on. As far as his previous history, for those who don't really know about Cyborg too much, everyone talks about Advanced Warfare. A lot of the articles that I've read talk about him being on Geared for Gaming back at UMG Dallas. Of course, that's like a fairly well-known team. Not really that well-known, but at least they had a little bit of a presence when it came down to Dallas, an event that I was at. But he was really well known for being on the team, not the organization, but the team known as Cream, in which case they played a lot of those online tournaments, not really going to Atlanta, I believe, as far as I know, but being in a lot of those online tournaments, in which case I believe he played with Apox, Sinful, and Proofy for that team. I know a little bit of the rosters kind of switched up for a little bit of time. I know like BL Fire was on that roster for a short period of time, so that team definitely switched up, but the one I'm thinking of when they ended up beating, I believe, FaZe in one of the tournaments was with Apox on the team along with those 3 guys. So these guys have definitely played for a long time. Cyborg and Proofy. Cyborg as well is a really good young AR, and from what I've been able to watch from like his overall stance is that he is the main slayer for this team. He's dropping big numbers, meaning low amount of deaths, high amount of kills a lot of the time, and he makes a lot of veteran plays. Like he doesn't talk as much. I think that'll kind of come with time as this roster kind of progresses on. You get more chemistry here and there, but I think he's a really good young AR slayer. Definitely kind of reminds me in some ways not only of an Octane necessarily, but like a younger version, not a younger version, but like a early stages of like a player like Octane in some ways, to the same extent if they play the exact same way, not dropping the same amount of kills, not saying that he's in comparison to Octane. I'm just saying they play a similar role when it comes down to their overall team. And kind of like in some ways, I would compare him and Assault to be the same way. A player like from C9 Eclipse, they definitely always have the AR in their hands, and they seem to be dropping big numbers a lot of the time. Now, the last player that we're going to be mentioning is going to be Sinful. And Sinful to me is always a player that I've heard of. It just, to me, hasn't really been a player that I automatically associate with a certain team. Like I think of Sinful Sinful, I don't say like, oh, that placing or oh, this moment or this type of event was where he really shined at. I mean, a major team that he was known for playing on was back in Advanced Warfare for Strictly Business. He played on Justice. That was really major. It's like a major transition for him, kind of being on a more known team, was being on Justice throughout Ghosts. Playing for Juke, but he is a veteran. That's the thing to kind of talk about Sinful. He is a veteran player. He's been playing for a very, very long time. And I talked about that Fuse team. He was kind of a leader for that Fuse roster. He was a guy who, in Black Ops 2 who were making kind of surprising top 8 finishes back in Black Ops 2 on Fuse. He's had an opportunity, but in some ways he hasn't really had that major break, that major turn where he just kind of turns up. And I think this MLG Anaheim event, which is obviously the reason why this team is forming, could be that opportunity for him, could be that chance in some way to kind of prove that his skill is still there. And heading into Black Ops 3, Sinful was on a team known as Kinetic Empire, who actually wasn't chosen for the original landing qualifiers to get into Stage 1 of the Call of Duty World League, which is kind of a surprising fact. I believe Threes Up and Orbit were actually chosen over them, in which case he played with players, I believe, like Twiz, Royalty, and maybe Mochilla. I'm not really sure Mochilla, but I know for sure it was Twiz and Royalty who ended up playing with him. Though he was on that Cloud9 team heading into UMG South Carolina, in which case that was like, I believe, one of the first Cloud9 teams that was announced, like besides the early one that had like Burns Off and those guys on it. Besides that team previously, this was the new team kind of heading into UMG South Carolina, and a lot of people were kind of writing this roster off, saying that these guys aren't going to be very talented when it came down to UMG South Carolina. These guys were, in some ways, a lot of people were saying this is an insult to the Cloud9 organization to pick up a team who is to pick up a group of guys who aren't known whatsoever, which of course I didn't agree with that at all. But obviously the Cloud9 roster with him on it was himself, Accuracy, Khalifa, and Killa. And unfortunately, though, they ended up placing top 24 at UMG South Carolina, releasing this team shortly after, in which case he really didn't have too much success after that. So a lot of these guys, especially Sinful, has been kind of swapped from roster to roster, playing on Cream, playing on a lot of teams that just haven't really made a noise. A lot of these guys, I said there's a good group, like 16 players who are constantly scrimming with one another. He's definitely been in that mix of, should we add him to the team? Should we not add him to the team? I know he was on a couple rosters suggestions that were going to be made into an organization, but didn't really fall through. And he definitely can be at times a little bit inconsistent. And I think he's a really, really good player. He's definitely going to be more of a roamer type slayer for this team, kind of in some ways an objective player, I think, for this roster as well. And every game type, going to be rocking that heat wave. Haven't really seen him choose anything other than that. And I know Neslo for sure is that one guy who is going to be motivated for this team more than anyone else. I think right behind him, though, it definitely could be Sinful. From what I watched from their game types, as far as hardpoint and uplinks go, because that seems to be like what everyone only scrims. I think they've played like CTF once, but I can't really go off of that too much. They can definitely compete in hardpoint. They were definitely having some really good games with 100 Thieves the other day. Kind of slightly losing certain games, maybe only losing by like maybe 20, 30 points at the very most. I watched them in uplink. They seem to be okay, but I think hardpoint is where they're going to kind of thrive. I have not seen them play Search and Destroy that much, but I'm looking forward to seeing how they play, especially at MLG Anaheim. So yeah, guys, that has been Echo Fox GG, aka One Team, One Dream. Of course, players being Proofy, Neslo, Cyborg, and Sinful. I want to give you guys a little bit of a background as to what these players are going to be representing as far as their history when it comes down to this roster and their organization in general. What are your guys' thoughts about this new team? You think certain issues could kind of arise? What major strengths do you think these guys have? Opinions on Proofy, Neslo, Cyborg, and Sinful. Any of these players, talk about them down in the comments. If you did learn something new or just enjoyed the video in general, please and make sure to go ahead and leave that like. I really do appreciate it. It does help me out a ton. And also, if you guys would like to, make sure to subscribe for future content. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video yet again. I will see you all in the next one. Have a fantastic day, and until next time, peace out.